real discoveries around the Dead Sea.
Our search for real discoveries.
Join the team as they return to Sodom and Gomorrah for a closer look.
They decided to return to Gomorrah. It was different this time anyway, because the 4x4 would enable them to drive right through the ancient city, and they could watch Peter's face as he saw it for the first time. Nearby was a strange-looking building with a pointed roof, surrounded by tons of hard ash. They estimated the height at 50 feet or more, and Peter wanted to climb it. Simon watched his progress and fell to wondering what it had originally looked like.
Then set out in search of Admah and Zor, the surrounding towns.
In Simon's last documentary, he did not visit the other 3 cities of the plain, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar, the place to which Lot and his family fled. The question is, does anything remain of these places? And if so, where are they? Approaching the Dead Sea from the opposite shore to Sodom and Gomorrah, the group noticed what appeared to be unnatural shapes and shadows in the bright sunlight. It was suggested to Einar that they take a closer look, and they left the vehicle. Having a 4-wheel drive this time had enabled them to cover much.
Witness their amazing discovery of the very pits that swallowed up the men of Sodom and Gomorrah, exactly as described in the Bible.
Assigned to Engedi, and they had since learned that it was a very important historical site. This area then became the next goal for the expedition. Whilst driving past the Dead Sea en route for Engedi, many signs warning of open pits were noticed. This rang a bell with Simon, who remembered reading something about pits in this area. He asked Einar to stop, recalling Genesis 14. The king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim. Could this be the valley of Siddim? It could very well be. The Bible says it happened by the Dead Sea, that is the Salt Sea, between the cities of the plain, and that's where they were standing at that moment. As they walked further on, another biblical verse sprang to mind. Genesis 14, verse 10. And the vale of Siddim was full of slime pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and fell there, and they that remained fled to the mountains. The group were surrounded by these pits, some huge and deep, and once again, the accuracy of the Bible amazed them.
Share revelation upon revelation as the Real Discoveries team locate Lot's cave.
They gratefully left the taxi. The remains of a building could be seen halfway up a nearby mountainside, and this was reputed to be the most significant archaeological site in the whole of Jordan. A large meandering staircase was cut into the side of the mountain, and everyone eyed it with some misgivings. The cave is set at the far end of the north aisle, and the fine mosaic work is perfectly preserved.
And visit Engedi, where King David hid from King Saul.
The Bible describes many events which occurred in this area around 1000 BC. Samuel 23, verse 29. And David went up from thee, and lived in the strongholds of Engedi. David hid from King Saul in this place. Samuel 1:19 says that King Saul wanted to kill David, and he chose to flee to Engedi and hide in comfort. Who could blame him? The name Engedi means the spring of the kid goat, and there is ample evidence that young ibex have always lived near these springs. David's pursuers evidently roamed the crags of the ibex in search of him. In one of these caves, David cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Samuel 1 verse 24 tells us King Saul was told that David was in the desert of Engedi. He chose 3,000 men from all Israel and set out to search for David and his men. By the crags of the wild goats, near some sheep pens, he found a cave and went in to relieve himself. The fugitives were far back in the cave, but David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe.
Journey with them to Abraham's oak, where he met God and the two angels beneath the trees of Mamre.
A very ancient and gnarled oak tree stands behind railings, supported by various means. According to tradition, it is opposite the very spot where Abraham dwelt in his tent when the angels promised him a son and heir. Here also he negotiated with Ephron the Hittite for Sarah's burial cave. Josephus is probably referring to it in Jewish Antiquities 110 number 4, where he writes, "Now Abraham dwelt near the oak called Ajiges." The place is in Canaan and is not far from Hebron.
And see the actual Abraham's well.
Still in the area of the great oaks of Mamre, where Abraham had his tents and flocks, the well still remains. Herod the Great built a wall around the entire area with the well in the corner, and in 325 AD, Christians built a church on the site. The group is standing in the ruins of the church, with Herod's 2-meter thick wall and Abraham's well still in evidence. It may have been used as a place of worship and was reconsecrated by Constantine. All present felt somewhat moved, being so close to a civilization from 3,900 years ago.
Then follow them to the town where Isaac, Jacob, and their wives now rest.
Canaan. Genesis 23. Now Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, "I am an alien and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so that I can bury my dead." The Hittites replied to Abraham, "You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you." Abraham said, "Sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price of a burial site among you." The Bible says that Abraham was offered the site free of charge, but he insisted on paying the full price of 400 shekels in silver. When the time came, he buried his wife Sarah in the cave.
After visiting their tombs, the team move on to Qumran, where the oldest Bible in the world was discovered.
Qumran, on the northwest shore of the Dead Sea. This site boasted a Jewish population as far
And to the great fortress at Masada.
Mount Masada, on the eastern fringes of the Judean desert, was another place not to be missed on the journey. Situated between Engedi and Sodom, it is detached from the surrounding escarpment, approximately 650 by 450 meters, and 450 meters above Dead Sea level.
Join the Real Discoveries team on their incredible journey through the Bible in this 1-hour DVD documentary, available at all Christian bookstores. Or visit realdiscoveries.com. Real people, real places, realdiscoveries.com.